Hello everyone. Thank you for taking your time in the weekend to join this community event. So this is our second virtual community meetup, which is hosted by the Bengaluru chapter. Since it's a virtual meetup, so it is essentially open for everyone. My name is Ayan Kumar Pan, and I'll be your host. And it's fantastic to see so many familiar faces in this meeting, as well as I see some new ones joining us today. Thank you so much. For those who don't know me, I work as a data integration specialist in Pure Storage with around 12 plus years of overall experience. And I'm deeply passionate about fostering community connections within the Boomi ecosystem. The main purpose of organizing these meetups is to encourage more learning, sharing, and growing together in the Boomi ecosystem. So once again, thank you for being part of this journey. So in this session, we have a lot of exciting things lined up. Um, First of all, we will have an insightful session by our guest speaker, Adam, on the topic, the art of runtime monitoring. So after which, we will have a short Q&A on the presented topic, and then we will have a quiz, which will be having multiple choice questions, and there will be prizes given to the winners, the top three winners of the quiz contest. And the prizes will be sponsored by Techie Geek Hub, TGH Software Solutions Private Limited. And I'm thankful to them for being part of this event as a sponsor. Um, so let me first introduce you to Adam. I'm glad to introduce our speaker for today. So Adam is a platform architect working in the Boomi organization. He brings a deep well of knowledge and hands-on expertise in the integration space. He is known for his passion for innovation, and he has been an impactful player is in the digital transformation journey of multiple organizations who use Boomi. So that they can seamlessly connect their applications and achieve greater success in the IT landscape. So today, Adam will be sharing his insights on the art of runtime monitoring, a subject both timely and critical as we explore new frontiers in the Boomi ecosystem. So please give a warm virtual welcome to Adam. Uh, Over to you, Adam.
Right. Well, thank you so much. Give me 1 second to move things around. Yeah. And do you see my screen just fine? It should just be just a slide. Art of Runtime Monitoring.
Yes, Adam.
Okay, awesome. Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here today. I'm really excited to be able to spend a little bit of time with y'all. So my name is Adam Biedenbaugh. I work for Boomi, and I've been here probably maybe like 5 or 6 years. When I first started off, came in as an integration consultant. So I was in the integration platform all day, working with customers and whatnot. After a couple of years, I became a technical architect. So that's really more of like doing the servers, setting up the runtimes, sometimes just the really technical questions like how to do these things connect. And then a little bit later, transition to platform architect. So here, this is more of like an enterprise as a service type of role where, we're really helping customers just, they're spending a fair amount of money. How can we help them be successful? But when I first started as a technical architect, I was pretty new. I really didn't know what I was doing. So, of course, they're going to give me just an easy customer to go work with. And that customer, I was like, okay, I'm really excited. And started working with them. They were having issues. So their issues was just, mostly around Atom queues. Sometimes just a huge amount of data would come in. Things would just start crashing. They really didn't know why, what was going on. And so I talked to a friend of mine who's, also a TA. really much more senior than I was, and I was like, dude, what can I do? What can I help? And I mean, his answer was pretty simple. It's just that, they really just needed to set up monitoring. A lot of the stuff we could kind of point at and say, hey, it's likely this, but really without that monitoring, we just don't know. So I went back to the customer, kind of tried to explain this to them. Um, and they just didn't really want to do that. So things broke a couple more times, and they kind of kept coming back to me each time. I was like, oh, we really need to set this up. So a lot of what today is just hopes that just what I've learned over the last few years can just help you be a little more successful, or maybe even just what I wish I could have told that customer in a little stronger way. So when we talk about runtime monitoring, there's really three pillars, or just modern observability in general. So they're going to have logs, you're going to have metrics, and traces. Traces meaning you actually see how data is going from one API point to another one. Um, and we think of these as three silos a lot of times because logs are over here, metrics are over here, traces are somewhere ephemeral. And they're really very intertwined. Like when you're trying to troubleshoot something, well, we want to see metrics at this point in time, and we want to see the logs. Can we really put together and craft from all this data a story? Because that's ultimately what we want. We want a story from all these metrics that we have because the story is kind of what tells us what happened. Um, so we'll take this stuff, and once we get a better kind of handle on what we're dealing with, we want to say why are we dealing with this stuff? Like why does it even matter to monitor? And it comes down to really two things. So first one, incident management. You really want to know is something going bad currently? We want to go fix it. Like the biggest thing you like as a developer in IT, you just don't want the business to know anything bad happened or is about to happen. So biggest thing, let's just make sure if something is happening or about to happen, let's go fix it. And then the second side is capacity planning. So this is all future state. And so we just want to look and see okay, are we overpaying for what we're trying to do right now? Like maybe we oversized our servers because we just took a guess and we were like, we don't know or how much our use is really going to be a year down the line, you can see, oh, I can downgrade these servers, save some money. Or maybe it's the flip where you are using integrations a little more, a little bit more, a little bit more each month. And a year down this line, hey, we're going to have to plan for something a little bigger. So these are the two main whys. Ultimately, it's, if this Boomi runtime is important for you and it's important for the business, you really just want to make sure it's stable and you want to make sure that everything you're putting out there is really helpful. So we're going to go through how to do all this and we're going to put it in just the use case of AWS CloudWatch. A lot of this is fairly universal, so it doesn't really have to be CloudWatch by any means, but I do want to talk about a specific use case, so then that way we can go a little bit more into the details than, high level. Okay, so for this case, we've got a client, you can think Postman, website, something like that. It's going through an application load balancer, and then we get here to where we just have a single VM. So this one is an E5, or sorry, M5, so that's going to be like your EC2 instance. From there, we're going to do two things. So the first one, logs. We'll talk about where all the logs are and which ones are important and why. That's going to go out to your CloudWatch agent, then up to AWS CloudWatch. And then the second one is going to be the JMX metric. AWS CloudWatch agent doesn't natively work with JMX metrics, so you kind of have to have the intermediate. So here I'm using Collectd. You can also use Prometheus. Both option work. Both are fully supported by AWS, and you can walk through their documentation. And then that CloudWatch agent, a third thing, not exactly pictured, is going to be all your system metrics. So how is the system as a whole doing, like your server, stuff like that? That's all going to be streamed out. And then AWS CloudWatch is going to be that central place for alerts, for management. So that way you don't have to look at an individual server. You can all go into a place to go look. Okay, so now we've got this. I'm gonna keep coming back to this multiple times throughout the talk, but let's jump into what logs are. So logs are gonna be the thing that just says these are the historical events that are occurred within a single system. So if you ever look at your Boomi runtime logs, they're always just going to be for a specific node. So like this server did this, and they do get separated by the different ones, but they're all historical events. So where they're located is always going to be in reference to the root installation directory. So when you first install your runtime, whether it's an atom, molecule, or a cloud, so atom being that single runtime, molecule, cloud being clustered, meaning here you've got multiple nodes. Underneath everything is going to be that file share. So root directory is just where did you install it? That's going to be where your bin directory, a bunch of other stuff is. You can even see that in the UI. Okay, so for what we care about, or what I'm going to be talking about, there's two main directories. Within the execution, so it'd be like root execution, there's a current. The current is kind of helpful. You probably won't ever look at it, but it's much more ephemeral. It's just like what is going on currently. But the other one is going to be history. So this one can be really helpful because this is where all your execution log or your process logs live. So if you want to scrape all that stuff and put it into CloudWatch, so you have a central repository, you would go here. These do get purged on a schedule. So whatever the schedule is set, um, they will get purged by default. It's 30 days. Um, and then, they do have sensitive data or potentially sensitive data because whatever you put in a notify shape, stuff like that, they can all get written here. The other one that's probably going to be the more important one is going to be logs. So root directory logs. Here we've got three main types. So first one's going to be your container logs. This is truly the health of your system. Everything that runtime is doing that has nothing to do with an execution, like a specific thread type thing, but how is the process or the runtime doing as a whole? So like, hey, we constantly are pinging the Boomi platform. Is it is that working? Are we getting messages? So there's a lot of various things that can happen, but that's probably the most important one. Next one is going to be your HTTP shared server log. So this is going to be everything if you have if you have a any kind of real-time integrations going on and they're using the web server, this is going to track all that stuff. So if at one point in time you start to get a lot of 400s, 500s, you can see, and maybe that's something, maybe a deployment happened, messed things up, or maybe something else got messed up. It'll give you an indication that that's going on. And then finally, we've got the local user log. This one you probably don't use as often, but it can be really helpful if you just need to know local events. So let's say we have this whole process and there's a bunch of stuff going on. We don't need the full process log because that's could be thousands of rows. But maybe what we want to know is step one occurred and then step two, three, four. We kind of don't care anything after that. So this can be where it's very curated, just a notify shape and a little checkbox. We'll go through that in a moment, but you can put a very curated set of steps. So that way, if you do need to troubleshoot, you can do it. And this can be another file that really you just stream it into your CloudWatch. So then that way you don't need to ingest everything, but you can ingest the important parts. So let's move on and just talk about like, well, this is how we actually parse all this stuff. So here, what I'm showing on the screen is just part of the CloudWatch agent. So it's just a config file. I do have all this stuff on my GitHub. And so the first one's container logs. Really, most important, they really showing the health of the runtime itself. It's going to be in the logs directory. That file that's going to be there. It's going to be date dot container dot whatever the internal IP address of that node is, then logs. The are multiple lines, so think of stack traces, stuff like that, where you're like, okay, well, like a lot could happen. So we're not doing this by law or lines. We have to do it by the start pattern. So that's what that last line that says multi-line start pattern. We just want to make sure every new line starts with a specific date. And then if it's a stack trace, well, that's still considered a line. So next is going to be those user logs. So here we're in the build tab, that very bottom section where it says write to local atom user log here. That one is actually going to write it to a local file. It's also going to be in that logs directory. So some people do find this really helpful, where they can pick high level. Hey, this specific transaction ID came in. We can process it. We know what's going on. To get that data, also, it's going to be in the logs directory. Here you can get um, the process name, a date, an internal IP address, .logs. Again, also this is date time um, formatted, so you're going to have a new line will be a new date. So you can also have multiple lines on here too. Next set, shared HTTP server log. Same thing, logs, the date, shared HTTP server, IP address, .log. These are just standard Apache type logs, so generally these are fairly easy to parse. Main important part is really just that HTTP status code. Like when we see it, do we actually see things coming in? Do we see 400s, 500s spike a lot? Or maybe we're getting more requests in than we were expecting. So a lot of little things that you can kind of check and make sure. Okay, and last one. This is probably the one that people really do the least, but I do find it kind of in a nerdy way kind of interesting. So process logs. Those are all those files that are in the execution/history. It is a fairly nested folder depending on how you structure it. By default, it's just going to be execution IDs, but it can get more nested. Okay, so here, when you go look at this file, when you're just, in Boomi's UI, everything's going to look like just like a normal log. It's just flat file, whatnot, and, line by line by line. When you actually look on the server and see what does it look like, it's actually XML. So if you check here and see like, what is he doing? Well, really, it's a lot of regex, and I'm just checking for XML. What I'm doing this in is going to be Fluent D because there's a little extra magic that happens because you have to know what the file directory is called and a couple other things. So Fluent D kind of makes that part a little nicer because ultimately what's under the hood is a little bit of Ruby, so you can do some extra stuff. But here, there's Ruby hiding behind this, but you also have just a bunch of XML that's being parsed, and you can take that. And so some people do like to actually make use of this and put everything kind of a nice little package into CloudWatch. Okay, so these are all the logs. These are all kind of the main things about the logs. If you're just starting off, like, I mean, even when I was brand new to this and you're trying to figure out what's important, what's not, like the logs probably don't need. Like maybe down the line they might be helpful, but if you're just starting off, like you can just say these are helpful, they're on the server, things get backed up. That's probably good enough. You can go look on the server. But as we transition like to the metrics, I think these are the parts that like if you're just starting off, this is the best and the first thing to do. I know like personally, I always felt like a little overwhelmed. Just there's a whole bunch of numbers, a whole bunch of stuff, what's important, and trying to parse that out. So here we're going to talk about which ones are those really important ones. There are a lot more, but I think these are the best ones to like if you just go do them today. These will be little things that will ultimately just make you more successful and will also make that company that you're working with more successful. So runtime metrics. Runtime metrics define the numerical record within a single system. They help monitor the health of a system in a short interval of time. So data is coming out, just keep being pumped. And the important part is they're numerical. So, there'll be parts where, yeah, Boomi does use strings, but what a metric is a number. It's going up and down. So we're going to come back to this picture again. And so here, data's coming in. You get to that M5. And now what we're starting to do is that line where it says JMX metrics. There'll also be some system metrics. It's all of that coming in, getting pushed. So do want to drive home that this is I think the most important part. So when we're looking at system metrics, these are some of the main ones to actually pay attention to. So we've got OS open file count. Generally, your operating system can only have so much stuff open at a time. And this will even be a value you see just within Boomi's UI. So if you go to the runtime, you can actually see this as one of the properties. You just want to make sure you're not getting too high. OS system load average. This is generally done per CPU. So like, let's say we have 8 cores, you're going to get a number that says like 8.0. That means, well, you're pegging the system, like it's fully booked. So ideally, you want to keep that lower than that. So usually it's system load average divided by number of cores. And if you keep that below one, you're pretty good. But at the same time, CPU, like if you are just pushing at 100% all the time, it doesn't really matter. It might make your integrations a little slower, but it's not going to hurt anything. But since it is making things slower, you probably can get better performance if you just increase that CPU. Next, directory usage. It's actually important. Run out of directory space, things are just not going to run. So depending on how you divvy it up on your server, like OS, you want to make sure, hey, I'm not running out of space on my OS directory or my partition. But if you're running like a clustered runtime, where there's a file share and some other extra stuff going on, well, you want to make sure the file share is not running out of space. If you have a local work directory, well, or partition really. You want to make sure that it's not running out of space. So there's a lot of extra little things here, but these are important because if you run out of space, things are just gonna stop working. And the reason why I say sometimes people put like partitions elsewhere, it's really because like, well, if you have OS partition and then now we have a file share, and then we also have this other partition. If I fill up this partition with my like work Boomi stuff, the OS can still run, which is actually really helpful because you don't want like you want to be able to still log into your server. But if you fill up that OS directory, it can be much more painful. So you can partition things out in certain ways that like, well, I can fill up this thing, but I'm not breaking my whole server itself. I'm just breaking maybe the Boomi application. That still means I can go fix it. Next can be RAM usage. And so this is really the server's RAM, and not just specifically to Boomi. Boomi uses it, but the server itself. Here, if you run out of memory, things just crash. So like really, you don't want to do that. And you just want to kind of keep um, just alerts on that. So next we got JMX metrics. So these are just important things for Boomi. This is like the one of the main ways that we, or I want to say the main way we actually push out data or metrics for stuff. And they're just it's a Java management extension, and it's just pretty common with something built into Java that this is how they push out metrics. So here the most important one is just how much heap are you using? Heap is just another word for memory, but in Java, you have to say you can use this much memory, no more. And Java kind of like takes it all up. A lot of it ends up being in garbage collection, just kind of waiting around. So sometimes if you're on the outside looking in, you don't really know how much memory you're using. So first, look at how much heap is being used. Also heat max. Only reason is you can do use divided by max, percentage. And those I think are probably the most important things. So those system ones you talked about and these heap ones, if you've done that, that's like 95% of what will make you successful. The rest of the things are going to be much more specific to you or to your organization. So I think like garbage collection, those are just helpful because you can retroactively look at like something happened yesterday. What can I do to try to parse together a story to say like what actually happened? Well, maybe garbage collection is part of that issue. Maybe you're starting to see, uh, a lot of real-time events coming in, a higher rate, and so maybe those things just can't get cleaned up as quickly. That's usually something kind of common. So maybe it's a narrative that you put number of running executions, like that's nothing you're going to alert yourself on, but maybe you're seeing more and more and more executions over time, and maybe that's part of like, oh, is there something else going on? So these extra things, they can be helpful, but like here at this point, these little things are not required. Okay, and then what we were talking about straight up metrics. They have numbers associated with it, but we do have some metrics that don't. So some of Boomi's JMX metrics are going to be strings or Booleans, so like true false. So here's just something that I've worked on with other customers who actually wanted to measure all that stuff. So here it's also in my GitHub account, which is just called collectd-boomi. But it is a way to use collectd. So that's what we're looking at here is collectd config file. And we're going to execute. It's a really just a Java program that gets compiled. And so we run it. We have a couple other parameters on it, and it will actually go get all of those metrics that you want. But it'll take something that's a string and convert it to something that's a number. So anything that's just relatively good. So things are running, everything is healthy, things are literally good. Some Atom queues do that. Those are zeros. We don't care. Anything above zero, ones, twos, those are all going to be errors. So that way you can convert something that's just a number to something that is not. Okay, so here's some of those geometric, and these are the ones that are going to be characters or strings or Boolean. So like atom status, there's a whole bunch of atom statuses here. So over here on this description part, I'm not going to read them all out, but most of them, like sometimes you're just kind of happy to know they're running. The main one running, that would be like your zero. This means okay. All the other stuff means it's just technically not running or it's pausing or something. Most of those happen pretty quickly. But ideally you want to say like, okay, well, my atom has been down for 15 minutes. It probably should not take that long to restart. We're okay with it being down for a little bit because it restarts. But for a longer time, maybe an issue happened. Maybe you want to go tell yourself. Next to low memory status, out of memory. These are Booleans, true, false. So you just want to make sure like, did a low memory event occur? Did an out of memory event occur? So you can give yourself a little indication. The out of memory is probably the one that's more important than the low memory. And then now we've got all that stuff. What can we do to like alert ourselves? Because that's really the important part. We kind of went through all these metrics and whatnot, and they're kind of honestly kind of pretty to look at a nice little dashboard, but you're not going to yeah, you're not going to be paying attention to it all the time. So here are some just recommended starter alerts. So you're going to get your CPU for the whole system. You just want to keep it under 90%. If it goes over 90, give yourself alert. And usually, like you don't care if it's just 90% for like a second. You have some kind of threshold. So maybe that it goes over 90% for like 30 minutes. Maybe that's somewhere in the ballpark. You kind of have to craft it to what you think is best for your situation. Disk usage, though, on the other hand, is very like if it happens, do an alert right away. So if my disk usage gets over 80%, well, let's just stop it, like, or not stop it, but we want to alert right away because that's really not going to go down. CPU IO wait. This is kind of sort of how busy is the CPU. It does have a couple other kind of factors involved. There's a little bit of disk IO that's in there too, but ideally you don't want there to be a high latency in there. So if it gets 100% or greater 100%, it's an issue. And then the status, this is where, hey, things did not start back up. Our thing is not running, our Boomi runtime. We just want to know. And probably the one that I think is like specific to Boomi, the most important, is just how much cheaper you're using. So use divided by max. If it's over 9%, then go ahead. It's an issue. It's probably going to be something bad's going to happen pretty soon. And then 80%, give yourself a warning. If you're using any atom queues, then we'll talk about that. But if you're not, then completely disregard this. It's not going to be helpful for you. But if you're using atom queues, really, this is where a string comes in. Like they say good. And so if it's the word good, everything's fine. If it says something other than that, it will have the actual error message within that string. So you probably just need to say, is it good? If it's not, then give me an error. Okay, so this is going to be the monitoring. I think this is the most important part for the metrics. And when you're just new, like just pick a couple of these. Like here, I'm just saying, let's do the first five. That's gonna give you by far the most success. I've dealt with a fair amount of companies and like they're big companies and it's 5 years in they start doing some of this stuff and it's really only because well errors happen. And so they had to look back and say, well, what could we have done to fix this? So I don't know, a little bit of me is there's this feeling of overwhelmness of, hey, there's all these numbers, but like, you know, this is just a good place to start. And then as you feel comfortable with this, you can expand, maybe find out for your system there's this other stuff that works, but these are a good starter ones. So next, let's talk about tracing. So this is that third pillar. And you're probably not going to do it too much within Boomi because it generally involves multiple systems working together. So it's not just Boomi does it, but like let's say you have a web front end and you have a couple of other systems that are all doing it. And ultimately there's a tr ID, and that single ID gets tracked throughout your entire system. So that way, what you can do is follow the flow of data during its life cycle across the multiple systems. So that's from a user clicking on a website, all these multiple calls, middleware, backend, and then actually back to that caller. And so that way it makes it so when you're trying to figure out what went wrong, well, when you follow the trace, you can just see it stop somewhere. Or maybe that trace has some error messages and doesn't go back. Because here we're going to talk about AWS X-Ray, which is just a subpart within CloudWatch, but it's nothing more than we're sending it this JSON payload, has some information like date, time, and whatnot, some messages in there. So it's really nothing crazy, but we're sending it off. We have a common ID, and then by looking at that, we can see some common structures. So there's two main ways to do it within Boomi for AWS X-Ray. So I'm just going to talk about one, and I'll hint on the other one. So here we're using a custom connector, so it's called APM. That one is found in bitbucket.com/officialboomi. That is just one of our open source connectors that we have. It goes through and makes use of OpenTelemetry, which is another agent, but that's kind of where that JSON part fits in that I was talking about. But here it's a connector. That connector sends it to OpenTelemetry agent, and then that goes up to AWS. Here we're starting a trace, so that means this is just a process that starts. Start a trace is this part. We have branch one. This actually, I'm not going to go too much into detail, but this is something elsewhere. And so we send an API call. That API call still has that tracking number in it, and it goes off and does what it needs to do, and data comes back. Branch two, I go make a request to this public API, get some information back. Branch three stops the trace. And if you see if there's any errors, it goes down that try catch and it throws an error in the trace and stops trace. Again, all this stuff is just really some JSON metadata that gets pushed up to AWS X-Ray, and you're able to follow that. And I forgot to click these extra things. So now let's take what I just showed you as a Boomi integration and just show like what it looks like in the UI. So here, this first one this is where the process executes. That branch one that I showed you where it's like, oh, making a hop somewhere else. That's what this is here. It's gonna go to chucknorris.io, great place for dad jokes, and then it's gonna come back. And then here we've got execution tasks, and that branch two that I had, which I went to boardapi.com, goes. And one, you can see all the hops, you can see where everything went. Up here in the top, that parent ID and subsegment ID, those are those common IDs that kind of pull everything together so you can see them. And then finally, you can just see like how long do all these steps take. So we start off and see this is the entire thread or trace. This is how long it took. This is how long this section took. So you can yourself start to put, hey, if we see like longer execution times, maybe at a certain point, maybe what's going on is maybe the database is getting slower, or maybe it's just under load and it's just not able to keep up. But it's a way to kind of track what's going on in these systems. So just kind of wrap everything up, like really, this is the things I've learned in the last few years, just to make customers successful. And I mean, it's that thing I wish that first customer that I talked to and they were having issues. I just wish I could have told them and like maybe convinced them a little better that like this is how they could be a little more successful. So hopefully today, as we went through the logs, the metrics, the traces, that you learned something new and something that you can take to your company. Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Adam, for this wonderful presentation. I hope you all liked it. Now I would leave this forum open for some question and answers on this topic, and if possible in some of the related topics as well. So based on this session, so we already have a question from Very good. The question uh, is it possible to capture the JVM heap usage uh, for a specific process? We frequently encounter the error Java language out of memory,
Hmm.
Java heap space error.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, not really. Like, it's like I'm assuming it's an atom or a molecule. So you're just going to have one giant JVM that's running. Each of your processes are just individual threads that are in that. You do have some monitoring platforms. I want to say maybe I think it's like Dynatrace or AppD or App Dynamics that can go a little further into the runtime itself, where you actually are seeing like, oh, this class is being run. This is how much memory this class is using. So there are some tools that like can go further into that detail. But a lot of times that actually takes someone being pretty skilled or knowledgeable about those tools themselves. But in general, like out of the box, there's really nothing that says this process is the thing that kind of made you go out of memory. Yeah, unfortunately, there's not a good way other than you can just tell as a system it's occurring.
Okay, thank you, Adam. Mary, I hope that answers your question. And if required, please feel free to ask any other question if you'd like.
I'm good. I am. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for answering that.
The next question is from Ardeep. The question is, in one use case, we are processing high volume attachments, which are large in size, and we encountered out of memory error or a
Hmm.
no space left on device error. Boomi suggested the heap size ideally should be 80% of the system available RAM.
Hmm.
What is the relation?
I mean, that sounds about right. Yeah, I mean, so let's say I'm just to make things easy, we'll just say there's 10 gig of RAM for the server. You make 8 of it the runtime, which you're not saying 8, it can go up to 8. But then that leaves 2 gigs for the rest of the server to do stuff like, I mean, this OS does stuff itself. So that part, yeah, 80% sounds just fine. But the other part, okay, we're doing stuff, large attachments, we're getting out of memory errors, no space on disk, two separate errors. The out of memory, well, you're probably, I mean, it depends on what you're doing. I mean, like let's say you put flow controls in there and they're threading, like that could be something because you're splitting up the work and now you're doing it at the same time, so it's almost doubled. That could be an issue. Or it could just be like, maybe you're using a script with these large files and it kind of does some stuff. I know if you're doing like XLST, there's a streaming option. So sometimes people, if they're using that crashes stuff. Um, and so, I don't know, it could be a couple things. No space left on disk. If these are large files, maybe you don't actually want to keeping this stuff. So just on the specific process, you can purge data right away. It's still going to keep your logs and all that stuff, but the actual data, the files, that won't get kept. So then that way, yes, you still run the process, but your Boomi runtime isn't going to save that like, I don't know, let's say 1 gig file sitting there And maybe that's the thing that's filling up that disk. But the no space less on device just means like you're running out of space literally on the disk. And maybe that might be a good option. Is just purging that data specific for the process that has a large amount of data, but not for the entire runtime itself. So here. Oh, sorry, you go.
Thank you, Adam. And I hope, Adip, your question is answered. Please feel free to ask any other question if required. The next, so we have our next question from Sai Kiran. The question is it possible to retrieve all types of JMX metrics using a Groovy script in Boomi without enabling atom properties or connecting data sources to the VM?
So no. So for the JMX metrics, you do need to enable those four JMX properties. They just kind of have to be there. If not, they're they're really not being published out. Um, but what you can do, like, yeah, there are maybe not, I mean, Groovy scripts, but I do know of one person who made a custom connector, and I'm gonna say I'm like 70% sure that one is there in the bitbucket.com/official Boomi. But that's all it's doing. It pulls all the JMX properties, like everything, at a very specific point in time. But I don't know, some of the stuff, like if you have access, I think really just like visual VM is by far the easiest. Like it allows you to look at everything. You can click around and maybe you don't know what you're looking for, but it does show you like point in time. Like right now, this is what's going on. It's not going to show you anything from like 5 minutes ago. Like there's no history. It just shows you currently. So if you're just trying to troubleshoot, trying to figure out something right now, generally I think a route like that might be a little better because you can just look at everything. You don't have to say like in most tools, I want to look at this specific metric because metrics, I mean, they take up their data. They take up space. So like if you're using Datadog, which is kind of or actually really any like they take up space. It's going to cost more. So I don't know, maybe that might be a better option than actually, I mean, there are the connector, you can do that, but maybe the better option is just visual VM.
Thank you, Adam. So at this point, we would like to proceed towards the quiz event. So we will have another round of the Q&A, and I see some other questions are also pouring in. So first of all, Yamas, I would like to introduce you to Chitra from TGH, who will be giving a very short presentation on their organization and how they host and and how they contribute to the Boomi communities. So over to you, Chitra.
All right, thank you so much, Anne. Good morning, good evening, everyone. My name is Chitra, and I head the marketing and sales for TJ Software Solutions. TJH is a proud Boomi partner and happens to be the sponsor of this event. So, on behalf of TJH, I would like to thank you all for being part of this great Boomi meetup. I am here today to talk about a couple of things. First, to give you more awareness about us as a company, what we do, and second, how we have been actively contributing to this Boomi community. Third, would like to see how we can go to the next level where we can collaborate with Boomi experts like you people. So, to start with, let's take a moment to appreciate the magnitude of this Boomi ecosystem and its landscape. Boomi has over 20,000 customers worldwide with a strong network of more than 800 global partners, serving them with 250,000 users and integration developers like each one of us. So let's have a big round of applause for the Boomi first, and definitely to ourselves for being part of this exceptional community who is here to share, learn, and grow together. At, at TJH, our journey begins nearly 5 years ago as a small startup with 2 members. Today, we have grown as a integration consulting service provider with a dedicated team of certified developers. On Boomi itself, we have a 50 plus team members, and in total, we stand strong in market with a team size of 70 plus integration experts who possess knowledge on different iPaaS tools. Now, TJH operates as an integration factory model, which reflects in our logo itself and has become a one-stop solution for all the business enterprises integration needs. Over the year, we have consistently delivered integration solutions, particularly with Boomi. We have customers, our clients from Fortune 500 companies, and we have our offices in North America, Australia, and in India, we have 2 delivery centers. One is Noida and Hyderabad. We take pride in ourselves being the integration first organization with a unique integration factory model that highlights the critical role of integration in today's modern IT integration landscape. We also have a strong presence in all the Boomi offerings, including integrations, API management, MDH, B2B, EDI, and equally we have been doing good and have strong presence in business verticals like manufacturing, retail, banking, and life sciences. We have amazing and aggressive growth plans in upcoming years, and I believe some of us will get a chance to work closely in near future as well. As a Bhumi Pro partner company, TGH actively fosters knowledge sharing through our tech talks, which are there live on our YouTube channel. We do have in-person meetups. Last was in Hyderabad. I believe some of you were there in our Hyderabad meetup in person. We do publish blogs on Bhumi on our website. We do have dedicated quizzes on LinkedIn. Every Wednesday, we have a quiz on Boomi on our LinkedIn channel. We do have community meetups, webinars with a vision to contribute to the growth and awareness of Boomi across on global platforms. Just a quick fun fact, our host for tonight, Ayan himself, was the 3-time winner of our Boomi quiz. Thank you, Ayan, for always supporting us. TJS has always been the torch bearer in spreading the awareness about Bhumi. And in the same line, today, we at TJS would like to propose the formation of iconic Open Bhumi Group, something like Open AI. And this Open Bhumi Group would work together with mutual collaborations and for mutual benefits towards fostering awareness and development of Bhumi ecosystem. Thus, we invite with companies, developers, and individual gig workers to come together under this banner of Open Bhumi Group, and let's together build the best of the market accelerators and Bhumi solutions. For this, this is our email ID alliances@techiegeekhub.com. Anyone who is interested can reach out to us, and we can collaborate and work together on search of the market ideas. And in nutshell, I would like to mention that at TGH, we aim to elevate the Bhumi ecosystem and make integration simpler for the world. Thank you. And I'm also sharing TGH LinkedIn link on this group so everyone can follow us on the LinkedIn as well. Thank you, Ayan. Over to you.
Thank you, Chitra. So folks, so it's time for the quiz event. So essentially, our quiz is also sponsored by the prizes of the quiz is also sponsored by TGH, who are also this event sponsors. So we will have 5 questions, all multiple choice. All of them being multiple choice, and there will be only one correct answer to them. So the rules of the quiz is whoever scores the highest, yes, of course, they will be winner. So we will have top three who will be receiving the prizes from our sponsor TGH. And in case of tie, means if the scores are similar, means if the scores are same between two or more participants, then we will consider the fastest time. So whoever has completed in the least amount of time to give the same amount of correct answers, he or she will be declared the winner. Means in the first, means in the top three positions. So are you all ready for the quiz contest? Miss, I'll be opening Miss, I'll be opening the poll as a quiz. So you will see it Miss, over the screen. So if anyone has any doubt, please feel free to ask now. So before I open the link of the quiz. Is everyone good to start? Okay, I guess silence is yes. So I would bring up the quiz poll now. So all the best to all the participants. Okay, the quiz is launched. I hope everyone is able to see and put the options. So we will have it open for next 3 minutes.
Uh, Ayan, one quick question from Faraz here. So I'm not able to see the quiz link or the poll. I
uh,
actually logged in from the phone.
Okay, so it will be in a pop-up actually. So there will be a pop-up, so which will come up here.
It's
Uh,
not coming actually.
I'm not
Not
sure
sure
about the
what that
phone.
is.
I'm sorry about that. I'm not sure if it will work in the phone or not. Gamas, I'm sorry about that for us. I'm not sure. So what is the correct
Okay,
answer?
no problem. No problem.
Guess maybe this is a good question. Do other people see the quiz?
I think yes, because I see some answers.
Oh, okay, cool. Just wanted to double check that it wasn't
I think
it
so.
wasn't just, everyone having the issue.
So I see we have 12 participants, 13 so far. So we'll give another couple of minutes for everyone to complete the quiz.
Hi, Hayam. This is Kiran.
Just Kiran.
Yeah. So, what if everyone scored uh 5 out of 5?
So we will have a tiebreaker, so which will be based on the time. So whoever completes first, so they will be ranked accordingly.
Yeah.
Something like fastest finger.
Yes, absolutely.
Gotcha.
Everyone scores 5 to 5, then everyone is great. No money to spend.
I yeah, means everyone who is joining here and who is participating is awesome, in my opinion. And if you can score 5 out of 5, it will be obviously super awesome then. Okay, so we'll give another minute, and then we'll stop the quiz. Okay, we have around about 5 minutes. So I will give a few more seconds. Let me count down to 10 in my mind, and then I will stop this quiz. Okay, thank you everyone for your participation in the quiz. So we will share the results shortly. So we will download the report of the quiz. And Adam, I would require your help to download the result.
Yeah, of course.
Since
Be happy to.
you are the host, you will be able to only download the CSV file. Thank you, Adam.
Yeah, of course.
And thank you everyone for giving this quiz and participating in this event. And I see few more Q&A are there. So I would like to restart the Q&A for few more minutes. So if anyone have any other question, please feel free to unmute yourself and ask it here. Any questions, anyone? I see Nitish, you have a question regarding some test item. So would you like to elaborate that here?
Yeah, I am. Is my voice audible?
Yeah, Nitish.
Yeah, basically we develop a interface. It was a user interface. So when we uh, test it for the first time, the test atom goes down around 15 minutes. Then it restart again. Every time it was happening when we develop a new interface, and the very first time we test it,
Mhm,
so the test atom goes down. So basically, it has 8 GB of RAM, but
mhm.
the heap size only, it was configured like 2 GB. So I think, is it regarding the heap size or any other issue with the runtime?
I mean, it could be a couple things. Like, I mean, the first thing I'd probably go and try to figure out is if you go like look in the container logs, like do you like does it say anything around that time frame of something is the issue? I mean, there's a good chance they might say something about it being low memory. It'll tell you how much is being used. And when you say 8 gigs, do you mean like the server has 8 gigs or the runtime itself? Like that max heap was set to
Uh,
8 gigs.
it was the server.
The server, okay. And so I mean maybe you do need to increase how much heap size the you're allowing the runtime to make use of. So that if you just go into where the atom is or the runtime, go to properties, it's under the basic sections. It just says heap size. Maybe that needs to be increased. I mean, when you're running like a smaller execution, like let's just say there's, I don't know, just something that works in the build tab. Does that work for you?
Okay, thanks for answering.
Well, no, but I was asking like when you run like a single process in the build tab, does that still work, or is it just when we deploy something and we have a big file?
No, it was like a single process.
Okay,
When
so
we when we test it for the very first time.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, that'd be my guess. It's just maybe you can increase how much heap you actually are allotting to the runtime itself. Maybe it's set to the default, which is 512. So maybe it might be helpful to increase that. Check the container logs to see, does it say, is there something else going on? But yeah, if it's a large file, I mean, it could be like various things. Maybe there's scripts in there. Maybe there's something else that actually is causing it just to use a lot of memory.
Okay. Thank you for answering.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Hi, Adam. Mary here. And one more question.
Yeah.
So there is this one performance issue we were noticing most of the time when testing a process in the test mode. The initialization of the process itself is taking a lot of time. So when we test with the no data start shape, so the process keeps on executing on the no data start shape for so long.
Yep.
Uh,
So which runtime are you making use of, and what does it
Atom,
look like?
we use private Atom Cloud.
Okay. So I mean the private Atom Cloud, so that means like your company runs it, not like the Boomi public cloud.
Not the Boomi.
Okay,
It's
perfect.
our own
Yeah, I mean,
cloud.
so I mean, a couple things. Like, really, what happens is your message or the request to execute this thing just gets put in queue. So like if you have an atom or a molecule, they usually happen a little quicker. But with a cloud, it's really meant to be like you're asking about like the runner, was it runner, worker, and the browser JVMs, which all do something a little different. And so like runner JVMs are going to be those batch executions, scheduled jobs. Um, Workers, those are going to be Atom workers. So like they're things that stay up all the time, all your real-time integrations are going through that. Browser doesn't get used that much, but it's going to be like you click test connection, something like that. So really what the cloud is trying to do is each of these boxes have a certain size and they're trying to fit as many things together. So let's say the full cluster of boxes is running. Well, once one comes down, it'll put a new one in. So this is just kind of that um, queue that's building up. I mean, sometimes that's what's going on. Maybe it's just there is a lot. The other thing, possibly what's going on is maybe it's just maybe it's doing a lot of work, but maybe it's just some kind of communication issues from the runtime to the Boomi platform, because how that whole kind of integration of stuff works is like here you're in the UI, you're clicking I want to run. That it's just a message that gets set and it sits on like really a Boomi bus. It's just kind of waiting there. Your runtime will pull that message down and then it will execute your process and then it will push back to the platform that it did something and then it goes back to your browser. So there's this kind of long trail of things that it's doing. And so, sometimes it's just not the most updated when you're looking at the UI, the build tab, when you're testing stuff. But sometimes it really could just be like, well, maybe that communication, maybe there's something going on with that. So, like, if you really want to kind of dig into it, maybe you can look at the container logs and see, like, hey, at that point in time, do I see any issues? Usually it's going to be atom.boomi.com is where the messages are going. Check and see if there's an issue. But that'd be my guess. Either there's a lot of stuff going on, and so you're just waiting in queue, or maybe there's some kind of communication issue to the platform.
Thanks,
Uh,
Adam. I think the issue is like not only I am facing, other developers are also noticing the issue. So
Yeah,
then I thought like, something related to the uh, runtime configs we have configured.
yeah.
Thanks, Adam. I will
Oh, yeah,
check
you're
that
welcome.
what you said. And another thing is on the Atom queue. While you are giving the session, you said you'll come to the Atom queues. So is there
Oh,
anything you want?
yeah. So the Atom queues, so the cloud, it's a little different because you end up not specifically caring too much about like specifics, but you kind of care about the health of the entire runtime. So, yeah, in the cloud, let me see, I forget the name. I remember it's the one that is under containers. look real quick. Yeah, so it's the container service plugin type, queue server, and the health status. You really just want to check and see if it's good. If it says anything other than good, then there's usually an issue. Some other like kind of quirky things just about like Atom queues, specifically on a cloud, is if you've got your cloud, you're sitting up in the parent account, and then you make a single attachment. Well, you might in the very top said, I'm gonna allow 10 gigs to be used for Atom queues. But somewhere deep in that code is actually an individual attachment only gets 10%. So like I might put 10 gigs here, but really your individual attachment only gets 1 gig. And also, what does that number really mean? Well, it doesn't mean just messages sitting in the queue, like waiting. It also means, well, everything that showed up in process reporting. So everything that is just like the data that's been saved and you can go see in process reporting. So if I go look and see, well, all the documents from the last like 14 days, those all count towards how much data is being used. So that disk usage space. So I don't know, those are just some extra things to kind of think about that are like obvious. But still that health will tell you like, is things good? Are there issues? And you can kind of dig a little bit into that.
Okay. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah,
Thanks.
you're welcome.
Adam, one question from my side.
Yeah.
When we update the extensions, right?
hmm
Extensions we update. Even if we execute a process, it will not show up until the extensions are updated that reflects on the UI level. And not only
hmm
that, we cannot run a process in build mode also for that molecule or for say for that atom. What is this reason? Does Boomi maintains a single property file for all the process?
So the property files do get pushed. They're sitting on the runtime. So for extensions, then that one, it's an overrides file. So that one, yeah, I mean, it gets updated. We do keep some some things on our servers, which those are all going to be the plain text stuff that you see already when you go look at extensions. The things we don't keep are going to be like anything that's encrypted. So you add it, we temporarily hold it, and then push it right away to your runtime. So we don't actually keep any of that stuff, like passwords and whatnot. So that's where like if you have an environment, you add a second runtime to it, it might get all the extensions that have to do with like cross-reference tables, things that are plain text, but it's not going to get any passwords, so you have to re-add those. So I think that's one half of the question is just that, well, those extensions, yeah, they really live there. Other like properties, so like let's say last execution date, any persisted dynamic process properties, those actually just live in a file. And so like whether you're testing in test mode or whether you're running it just on your runtime, they're going to look the same. So that way, if you are in test mode and you run it, well, that last execution date is going to get updated. That did that answer all your questions? Or is there something more you wanted me to go into?
Not fully, but I'm satisfied with what you have answered
I
Okay.
now.
have
Yeah,
a,
just
I
got
have
it.
one more question on the same topic. So for
Yeah,
the
sure.
extensions, let's say we have a dev environment and we have 4 nodes
hmm
in that. Okay. So that extensions overrides.xml file, do we have 4 files on the 4 nodes
No,
or
it's
one file
just
for
one.
the
It gets saved on the file share.
So all the 4 nodes will take the properties from that one overrides.xml file, correct?
Yep. Yep. It will.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're gonna see it, it's like it's gonna be your install directory account slash and then your instance ID, and then it's gonna be down within that section of stuff.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay, so would you like to ask any other question to Adam? So I believe we are already over there. But still, if anyone would like to ask any question, please feel free to ask now. So this is your time. Okay, I assume silence is good. So thank you everyone again for joining this event. Thank you so much, Adam, for the insightful session and answering all the questions from our participants. And thank you, EGH, for sponsoring the winners of the quiz event. So we will collate the results and we will reach out to you. And we, we will also announce the winners on our LinkedIn post. So please keep an eye on our LinkedIn post on this matter. And and if anyone else is interested to be part of the community meetups as a host, please feel free to reach out to me, and I will connect you with the right persons. So it will be a very good opportunity to host the event, learn how things work in Boomi, and also get to know some interesting people who are associated with the Boomi ecosystem. Well, thank you everyone again for your time. Bye. Have a nice weekend ahead.